Welcome back. Poor old Perth copped a battering today. It's apparently one of the coldest winter days in Perth in living memory, and they got a bunch of rain as well. Not so cold in the southern capitals of Melbourne today, and up north it's pretty warm, but another winter is on the way, and we've got another warning with a leading energy chief today saying power prices will take years to fall. And we're so far behind in building the new transmission grid that we're going to need to lay, and I saw this on Peter Credlin's show earlier, 500 to 600 kilometres of transmission line a year. Well, the problem with that is we need 10,000 kilometres of poles and wires, and we can't even get the material to make that transmission line easily because the rest of the world's trying to do the same thing. Well, National Senator Matt Canavan's been warning us about this forever and joins me now. That's a fairly unrealistic prospect, isn't it, Senator, to be laying 500 to 600K of transmission line a year to get to 10,000?
Absolutely. We're much more likely to start unicorn breeding industry in this country than do this sort of stuff. And then you'd also have to ask a question: why would you do this? 500 to 600 kilometres of transmission lines a year. That means there's 500 kilometres of land that's crisscrossed farmland often. It's crisscrossed with these things, which interrupts farming processes, which causes environmental damage of its own. Not to then say about the massive amounts of wind farms and solar panels, which take up enormous amounts of land, destroy koala habitat, a massive impact on our environment. And what's apparently it all for? Apparently it's to try and save the environment. We destroy the environment to try and save it, even though China is building 2 coal-fired power stations a week, is absolutely absurd. And in the meantime, everybody's paying for this absurdity. Power prices have gone through the roof already, and they're going up again after the closure of the Liddell coal-fired power station, despite all the experts saying that there was nothing to see here and a closure of a coal-fired power station wouldn't increase prices.
Matt, I was lucky enough to drive north of Perth in January, and when you go from Perth up through Geraldton up to a place called Kalbarri, there are brand new transmission lines crossing wheat farms in that region, presumably to bring the solar energy and the wind power down to the capital of Perth. But they are really a scar on the landscape. I was quite staggered by that.
And that's why you're seeing such a reaction in the bush to this. It's pretty much the most common issue now that's raised in country areas is the impact of transmission lines, solar panels and wind turbines on people's farming activities and just the general community ambience in their areas. These are industrial projects that are industrialising vast swathes of our landscape, take up so much more land than mining. We hear a lot about the issues of the impact of mining, and yes, mining has an impact, but it's a very, very small footprint compared to what we're talking about here to get to net zero emissions. I mean, there was a university body that's calculated what we would need to do to get to net zero emissions, called Net Zero Australia. They've calculated that they want to put solar panels in an area around Collinsville in North Queensland that would have a diameter of about 300 kilometres. So you could drive for 3 hours and all you'd see is solar panels. I mean, it's totally absurd, of course, but what about the environment? What does that do to a natural environment to put up a circle of 300 kilometres worth of mirrors everywhere? As I say, these are so-called greenies that want to protect the environment, yet they're destroying it in the name of it. It is ironic, but it's also incredibly sad given the impact this is having on rural areas. Unfortunately, not many people like you get out from the cities and see the bush, so we've got to get this message out to people that this is, as you say, a scar in our landscape that needs to be stopped.
Well, one of our city-bound politicians, Energy Minister Chris Bowen, you must have laughed at this today, Matt. He said he finally conceded he is, quote, not satisfied with the pace of progress on clean energy projects. What a surprise that is.
Well, I just wish he'd show so much disappointment about the failure of his promise to cut people's power bills by $275. I mean, he and Anthony Albanese mentioned this 98 times before the election, including over 20 times after the Ukraine war was kicked off. We now have coal and gas prices much lower than they were before the Ukraine invasion, and they're still blaming Vladimir Putin for the failure of their election promises when the rest of us just got duped. The Australian people were totally duped by Bowen and Anthony Albanese into thinking they would cut their power bills when the exact reverse has happened. Power prices have gone up enormously for people. People's bills are going through the roof. They're struggling to pay them. And then there's more pain to come, because we just saw New South Wales hit a record power price last month, or the 5th highest on record last month after the Liddell coal-fired power station shut. This train is not slowing down. It's getting worse, and I worry it's going to get worse before it gets better, until we see common sense and build reliable coal-fired power stations, gas-fired power stations, and one day nuclear power stations too.